Chapter 33. Bancroft House, Somerset, England, June 20th, 1889. Darkness has a way of amplifying sound. Every breath and teardrop, every rustle of clothes and clanking of chains is echoed back to you in nauseating clarity. In the dark, there is no space. Any room could be a vast expanse of nothingness, or confined to just beyond your reach. If you were to keep groping blindly in the air, perhaps someday your fingers would brush against the wall, or the floor, or something far less comforting. But how long would that take? How long would you have to inch footstep by footstep through the void, praying for a solid surface? Seconds? Minutes? Hours? Haley did not need to worry about reaching for walls. They could barely reach anywhere at all, and even if they could, the circulation to her fingers had long ago been cut off, and any sense of feeling they might have once conveyed had drained away with their blood. She would have screamed if she could, but her vocal cords were already torn to ribbons from days on end of crying out into the nothingness. The darkness, after all, was good at amplifying the sound. Perhaps someone would hear her if she called out long enough into the darkness. Yet she knew that the stone walls of the cellar were keeping the sound contained. Her wrists were raw beneath the coarse ropes which bound them, and every attempt at movement sent pain racing through her nerves as her skin threatened to blister and break. Haley didn't know how long she had been down here. Days, perhaps, even weeks. She wasn't even entirely sure where here was. Certainly not London. The stale air was far too quiet for that, even in the cellar. She had tried counting the hours, hoping her body's natural rhythms would give her some indication of the time passing around her. But Haley's mind was too addled from pain and thick with fog from days of hunger and exhaustion to truly take note. There was a creaking sound, almost deafening in the dark, and Haley listened to the oncoming footsteps, racking their mind to match them to someone. It wasn't hard. They didn't have many options when it came to visitors. Not too heavy and shambling. Not too mechanical and stilted. Light flooded the room from the lantern as the door to the cellar was thrown open, and Haley squeezed her eyes shut to block out the blinding brightness. "Good morning, sunshine," Sherbet cooed mockingly. "And how are we feeling today? Enjoying your stay?" Haley didn't dignify them with a response. Haley didn't dignify the chemist with a response. She turned her head away and tried to open her eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the light. The moment her eyes were even open a crack, however, Sherbet's hand clasped around her chin, yanking her head upwards, and Haley found herself staring into Sherbet's face. She could smell the festering breath and metallic reek of their bloody cheek only inches away. "You should look at people when they're talking to you," Sherbet growled, turning her head side to side, inspecting her face. "You look terrible, Haley. Dehydration does not suit you in the slightest. Tell me, has Seven been keeping you well fed? We wouldn't want you to die down here, would we?" Haley's shoulders tensed. The automaton had been down to visit periodically over the time she had been tied up here, although she hadn't seen him for quite a while now. Seven had poured water between her lips and placed chunks of bread in her mouth. He had not spoken to her. She had not spoken to him. "Would we, Haley?" Sherbet prompted. Haley steeled herself, forcing air through her aching lungs. A harsh breeze pushed through the desert of her throat. "No," she croaked. Speaking felt like swallowing glass, and she winced as the sound escaped. "Exactly." Sherbet cast her chin aside, leaving her to flop back against the wall she had propped herself up on. "I'm surprised you've lasted this long, honestly. I mean, when the wailing stopped and it was all so quiet, I thought you had finally kicked it. But look at you go. Sherbet was pacing, but stopped to gesture at her, as if presenting a captured wild animal from the far-off colonies to an audience of dazzled onlookers. What you want, Sherbet? Haley spat. The scientists rolled their eyes. A distraction. Athena's been unconscious again for what, 2-3 days now? And to tell you the truth, I'm getting bored. Haley's chest tightened. What did you do to him? Me? Me? Sherbet laughed. I didn't do anything. It's these gifts of hers. Every time she makes something explode, they mimic an explosion with their hands. They just can't handle it. Sherbet snapped their fingers. Out like a light. Honestly, at this rate, they're going to literally burn themselves up before they become of any use to us. Poof, their body just up in flames, nothing left but ash. It's a real possibility, I've been told. Endirian... They gritted their teeth. David tells me, at least, that Endirian knows quite a bit about the child's history. What they are. Let them go, Sherb. Haley rasped, flopping forwards to lean towards them. Let me go, please. Sherbet smirked, leaning up against the far wall and looking down at her. Athena? Well, there's the trick, Haley. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't think anywhere else will take him, poor thing. I wonder where he got that idea. They crossed their arms. And they're so desperate to get Jamie back, they wouldn't leave us even if they did want to. Sherbet strode over to Haley and crouched on the ground in front of her once more. And you? Why would I let you go, Haley? Haley looked them up and down through a veil of her tangled hair. Because it's me, Sherbet. I'm your friend, please. It was the same conversation, the same desperate pleading every time Sherbet had come down to talk them like this. Every time Sherbet had come down to torment them like this. Oops. Wrong answer. Sherbet shoved Haley hard in the side and she crashed to the ground with a howl of pain, her bound wrists unable to catch her fall. The solid knock of her skull colliding with the stone floors echoed through the cell. I mean, honestly, it's like you're not even trying to be compelling. You're a writer, aren't you? Where are all your fancy words? Haley's vision swam. Everything was blurry and her thoughts wove upstream through a river of molasses. Why? She choked. Her body had no more tears to give, but she shuddered with an empty sob. Why are you doing this? To you? Sherbet asked. David asked me the same thing. Why am I keeping you here? You've just seen too much, I'm afraid. I mean, if I let you go right now, cut your bonds and let you run up those stairs to freedom, you would go right to the police. You'd say, guess who I just saw blowing up houses in London? And we can't have that, now can we? Or worse, you'd go off and tell Strawberry. Or Raymond, if he's still alive somewhere. I won't, Haley pleaded. Please, Sherbet, I won't tell anyone, I promise, just let me out. Please, you can let me out. As much as I want to believe you, Haley, we are friends, after all, as you said. I just don't think I can trust you. People tend to make rash promises to get out of bad situations. Besides, they shrugged, it's more fun to see you down here. I've had so few victories lately. After the whole deal with Jamie escaping and with Ray, not to mention Athena being so weak. They spat out the word angrily. It's comforting, seeing you struggle. Fuck you, Sherbet, Haley grunted. Sherbet kicked her in the side. She let out a terrible, mangled sound caught between a gasp and a howl. Watch it, Haley. You're entertaining, not necessary. As I said, we wouldn't want you to die. But we sure as hell don't need you to live, either. Haley whimpered in response as Sherbet moved back to the lantern by the door. You know, Sherbet continued, you could have stayed out of this. If you hadn't gotten involved, I don't think you would have crossed anyone's minds. Do you know why? They waited for a response that didn't come. Because you're not important to anyone, Haley. Not true, Haley mumbled. That's not true. But wasn't it? She hadn't seen any of her friends for years before now. Her letters went unanswered. Her days were spent alone. She had no family left, no friends. Even Mumbu, the person she cared about most in the world, had waited to contact her until everything went wrong. Until she had no other option. Haley was just a last resort. Perhaps Sherbet was right. Not telling you I could understand. Strawberry's words drifted to the surface of her churning mind, floating in the waves of nausea which lingered from her head hitting the ground. She was alone. Not just in this cell, but outside it too. Trapped and alone. And do you know how I know you're not important? Sherbet asked, yanking her violently back to the cold, damp present. Because, Haley, you're here. You've been in this basement, what, a week at least? And do you know how many people are looking for you? The chemist waited for Haley to respond. Haley couldn't bring herself to answer. None, Sherbet smirked. No one cares. I mean, hell, Easton's been keeping tabs on Strawberry as we speak, and even she isn't out looking for you as far as they can tell. In fact, as far as I know, being down here is the most time you've spent with your friends in a very long time. You're welcome for that. Sherbet lifted the lantern off its hook and moved to open the door. 7 is occupied right now. If I remember, David or I will be down with some water for you. If I forget, well, I hope your last meal was filling. Sherbet, please. They closed the door of the cellar behind them, and Haley listened in the darkness as the lock clicked shut, and Sherbet's footsteps ascended the stairs beyond. She shivered on the floor. There was a puddle where her face rested against the stone, and she didn't know if it was water seeping through the walls of the decrepit building, or her own blood pooling from a freshly opened head wound. In truth, she didn't care either way. Had Sherbet been telling the truth? Was there truly no one out there looking for her? Please, Haley whispered again into the darkness, closing her eyes and letting out a wheezing sob. As her mind sank lower into hazy unconsciousness, she noticed the darkness had not echoed the sound. It had simply swallowed it whole, leaving her without even the company of her own voice, trapped and alone.